All right, it is the System Failure Podcast, number 49.
49, getting up there. Love it, Brian. So, in the interest of full disclosure, we're just recording at an unusual time this week, and the reason for that is because you, Brian, said that you have experienced something of a psychological breakthrough. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that's pretty awesome. And you have not. So, I'm learning about this with the rest of the audience in real time here. If you can say that when I'm on a recording and they're listening to it live. But I'm very excited to hear what you got for us and our listeners. So, why don't you take it away? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, we started talking about Jonathan Haidt last week on the podcast.
Yeah. This is The Coddling of the American Mind, and his latest book is...
The Anxious Generation.
The Anxious Generation. And he's been making the podcast rounds. I assume this is where you've encountered...
Well, Audible randomly recommended it to me, and I had like a bunch of downloads I needed to use before I could cancel their membership and they go away.
Oh, all right. So I didn't realize this. So you've hit up Jonathan Haidt's latest audiobook.
Yeah, well, somehow, the recommendation algorithm has recommended this book to me.
All right.
Which, will probably free my mind from the crazy technological algorithms there.
The finger of fate is pointed at you, then, it sounds like.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, just like, last time, he's talking about how, kids born after 1995 especially are, like, effed because, they are saddled with technology from a young age and, pornography and video games makes, growing boys want to off themselves, and social media makes, growing girls want to off themselves.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this on the last pod. And is this all is this the main thesis behind the new book? Or is this just a part of it?
I mean, I guess that's what it comes down to.
All right, so that's more or less the main thesis. Okay, all right, I'm with you then. It definitely seems like technology, or at least the way it's been deployed, is, deleterious to say the least.
I guess to cut to the chase, he just talks about how your mind works at some point in the book, right? And I guess I think maybe we all know this, but your mind can be like in defensive mode or can be in opportunistic mode, right? They're on either end of the spectrum of like how your mind works. And so when you're in a defense mode, you're trying to protect yourself. And so like if you're like a kid, crying for your mom or something, like you're in defense mode, right?
Well, yeah, fight or flight, right? Your system dumps cortisol, and people being under heavy loads of cortisol for... You're supposed to have a shot of cortisol to help you get away from the saber-toothed tiger, right?
Yeah.
But not be on a steady drip of cortisol, for years on end, right? And yeah.
Well, and to continue the baby metaphor, right? When you set out on your own to like explore things, and you're touching and put everything you can in your mouth and whatnot. Well, you're like in an exploratory mode or like an opportunistic mode, right? And so the either end of the spectrum is like defense mode and opportunity mode. And basically, to be happy, you want to spend your time in opportunistic mode. Or to have PTSD, right? Like what this really means is you're stuck in defense mode, right? And I think it's a problem that probably a lot of people can relate to. And so, I guess like the epiphany, right? I guess so. I came to it a bunch of ways, but I guess I feel like I've spent, like in the last podcast, I was talking about how I feel terrible all the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right. And so I think the truth is that I feel terrible all the time, like except when I'm doing like hot yoga is what I realized. I like doing the hot yoga.
That's it? There's no other example you could think of? Just hot yoga? Or is that just like what's in your orbit recently? You're not meaning a comprehensive statement. It's just that in the past 6 to 12 months, that's the thing that's really made you feel the best.
I've really only been doing it for like 2 months.
No.
But certainly it's not like going to work and like slaving behind the computer. Yeah. And, Magic the Gathering is okay, although if you want to be good at it, it's a lot of being, like, hunched over your computer, which, it does give you, like, a repetitive motion injury, especially when your normal desk job is to be behind the computer for 8 hours.
Well, they're both horrible for their own reasons, and then you marry them into one life, and, the suffering is replete, I'm sure.
Well, really, it's like worse than that because playing Magic the Gathering will put your brain in defense mode, especially playing it online, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it'll do. And
I just wanted to hold you up for a second. Is your brain ever in opportunistic mode when you're playing Magic the Gathering? Or is it only defense mode? Is it a ratio or is it a...
Well, see, it's more about like the after effects of particularly playing like several hours of Magic the Gathering online, where you're really focusing on the tiny little cards like on your screen, and it's that kind of focus. I mean, you definitely have to be like looking for opportunities if you want to like play like any kind of game at like a high level, or
you have to be tuned into the metagame, so to speak.
I mean, well, I mostly do it just I've just been doing it for like a long time. Is how I just learned by making mistakes, right? Anyway, but it's just more about like the after effects that like that kind of focusing on like tiny bits of digital like on a screen, and like you get like this crazy light shining in your eyes, and like you got to think about how like it affects your posture. I mean, it just has like a dramatic effect on the way that your brain is operating. Although to be fair, I mean probably like doom scrolling on the For You tab on Twitter is probably worse.
Yeah. Okay, so so is there a so I'm just I don't want to get too far here, because I'm just is it the, I interpreted this in a hormonal sort of cortisol level with the fight or flight response, but that's not really at all what's happening with Magic the Gathering, though, right? It's more. It sounds like it's more about the anatomical geometry of what you're doing, and the what you're like rapidly shifting gears in your mind nonstop is just a twitchy mode of being or something like that. Like, is this what you're saying?
I guess I would say that like playing Magic online. Well, really, it's like it's not that different than perusing Reddit. I mean, I really think that's the level that affects your mind. I mean, like the repetitive motion injury is, I suppose, unfortunate, but I think the real issue is it's just the way. Well, okay. Here's one way to think about it. So the more that something is like doing cocaine, the more it's going to put you in defensive mode, right?
All right, what's the connection there? Because I can see what you're saying. Like, there's the dopamine cycle. You get caught on these very short dopamine carousels, and then you don't make dopamine normally, and you end up dependent, and it just becomes So what are you saying exactly then about?
So if we just compare like the activities of like playing Magic the Gathering, and I don't know, maybe like eating a sweet potato. Well, I would say that playing the Magic the Gathering is more like doing cocaine than the sweet potato.
Yeah.
Although a sweet potato can occasionally be very good, especially with butter on top.
Positively delightful, but it doesn't involve the twitchy state of mind that Magic or Reddit or Twitter or any of these apps, anything that runs on your phone, right? So,
well, I mean, you gotta imagine cocaine as like the worst possible destruction for your mind, right? I mean, you're gonna have like, yeah, it is definitely. I mean, it's gonna f your ish up, so to speak, doing cocaine, right? That's what it does to you. So,
well, I certainly I will get on board with the destructive power and potency of coke. I'm just thinking there's some crazy drugs out there, though. Coke is can we give it the crown?
Well, I don't know. It's pretty darn bad.
Yeah. All right. So let's just say it's not a great thing to be, it's not a great endeavor to accomplish.
Right. And so, just things that are going to be more like cocaine are going to like be bad for you. So, like watching internet pornography, playing the video games. Well, those are probably, just they're pretty darn disruptive without like actually taking some kind of like ingesting a drug physically into your veins or something like freebasing. They're just pretty darn disruptive. So anyway, like what you need to do to not have the anxiety is like cultivate an opportunistic mindset, right? So that's like the opposite. And so I guess like what I'm trying to say about the last 25 years is that I built like a impenetrable fortress, man. Or I certainly honed my massive fortress over 25 years.
What's the nature of this fortress? What does it keep out?
Well, it's just like it's not so much what it keeps out. It is the defensive mindset, right?
So you're defensive, but not necessarily, but
like you're defensive instead of opportunistic mindset. I mean, that end of the spectrum, it is the fortress, man, or it's like the wall, like from the Pink Floyd's The Wall.
I'm still in a dopamine /cortisol mindset here, or like not mindset, but like analogy here. And so, what do you like? What is this? What is? Tell me. Speak more about this fortress.
Well, like in the wall, to talk about Pink Floyd for a bit.
Yeah.
Well, see, the wall really doesn't come to a satisfying conclusion as to how the protagonist is going to solve his problems. Like, at the end, right, the judge is like, the evidence before the court is incontrovertible. There's no need for the jury to retire. Since, my friend, you have revealed your deepest fear, I sentence you to be exposed before your peers. Tear down the fucking wall, right? That's how it goes, right? Now, anyway, that's not really like a satisfying answer. Like, what happens with the wall is it repeats back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And it just goes back into itself. And, well, the judge is kind of a hard... Because in theory, tearing down the wall would be like the solution to the protagonist's problems in the wall. But the judge is like an evil character and is portrayed as like a giant ass in the movie. And it like shits on the hero as the wall turns into like a toilet.
I remember that animation. Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, the wall. My point is though, the wall doesn't really teach you how to get like out from behind the wall or like the fortress or whatever, right? But so anyway, what you need to do though is like do activities that put you in an opportunistic mindset. So maybe the revelation is that there are activities that put you like into an opportunistic mindset. But I mean, I think really what makes the hot yoga work is it definitely puts you in into an opportunistic mindset in the way that it's like the opposite of watching pornography or doom scrolling on Twitter, right?
Yeah, well, it's like a thing that requires discipline. So when you practice hot yoga, like anything that requires discipline, you're building yourself up. But when when you round into lap 3 around the P hub, you're like giving away your fortitude. Like you're being less disciplined, so you're becoming weaker almost.
Right. So your opportunistic mindset is something you have to cultivate. Like it's not it's like not easy to do hot yoga, right? I like getting up at 5:30 and doing it because then you can't like think about doing it. If you're trying to do it like after work, that's like never gonna work. I don't know how anyone does that.
You have it on your mind all day, yeah.
But if you're just in a crazy stupor, you can't really think about it. So yeah, 5:30 is perfect time to get up for it. But anyway, that is like so that is like the opposite of being in the fortress is definitely you're getting an opportunistic mindset where like you feel like if you take risks, there's some like a positive chance of payoff rather than like a negative chance, right? Yeah. And so it puts you, you can be like Han Solo. That's what he does is takes chances, right?
Yeah, he's risk tolerant. Yeah. Well, that's pretty good. So cultivating a abundance mindset looks like having discipline, like Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. What do you reckon?
Well, it certainly means doing things that. Well, what you got to do is just gain discernment for like whether an activity will help you. And I guess what I didn't understand before, I just didn't really like. I didn't believe that doing something positive would actually make a difference. I guess is the problem. I don't know. Like I would. I mean, I did hot yoga before, although I hadn't figured out to go in the morning and. I don't know, but it's like it's an increased discernment is what it is, right? And so it's about cultivation and discernment.
Surely you must have like it's like it sounds like you have experienced a little bit of improvement from doing this hot yoga, and so now it has like it feels emotionally true. You don't have to like try to logic your subconscious into doing the thing. Now you can feel it. Like, is this what does this sound like what you're experiencing here?
Well, it feels like an increased, like if you recognize a pattern that you didn't recognize before. I mean, a lot of patterns are obvious. But I don't know, there's the patterns that you don't recognize. And, so I mean, it's like recognizing a new pattern.
Well, that's pretty good. Outstanding, in fact. So how, other than like, what's your next frontier of what's your next activity? What's the next thing you're going to do? Like you're obviously going to take this philosophy and go beyond hot yoga with it. So what's the next plan?
Right. Well, my immediate plan, I think, is to do kung fu. But I have a story. See, I went to this concert last night.
Yeah, Primus. I heard it was a pretty good show by all accounts.
Yeah. Well, they're opened by this band Coheed and Cambria, who's like my coworker's favorite band, and I'll explain about it in a minute. And then there's also this guy, Mr. Puddles, who was this clown. It was called Mr. Puddles' Pity Party. He was the opening act, and what he would do is take Stairway to Heaven and sing the lyrics to Gilligan's Island over it. And he was just dressed like this sad clown. And it was pretty wild. But, okay, so this is my first time going to a I guess I didn't really think about, like, mosh pits. But it's like an outdoor concert at Thompson's Point, right? And there's, like, no seating. And so, yeah, I mean, I'd seen Primus before with, like, a seat. But there was a pit where the people were moshing up there. I'd never, like, really fathomed that I might be, like, in a mosh pit, right?
That reminds me of my high school days. But yeah, carry on.
Have you ever been in a mosh pit?
Yeah, we would do them at at the school dances until teachers busted us up. You know.
Well, how many people were in your mosh pit?
40 maybe.
40. You guys mosh like middle school or high school?
High school, yeah. The whole high school's there. You got all the grades. We were a small school, but yeah, I remember seeing Jason in the mosh pit. He was one of the underclassmen going to work instead of mosh pit.
Wow.
Now, there's like mosh pits that are like crazy where there's actual injuries that are really violent. This was more just like aggressive crashing into each other. Probably less than 6 people fell down to where they weren't on their feet the whole time. So pretty light by some moshing standards that I've heard of. But nonetheless, that's what we called it.
I guess I'm surprised because, like, I mean, we would... Like, maybe 6 people might mosh as, like, a joke because that's what they do at concerts. But no dance I went to at Hebrew never had, like, a mosh pit.
I'm afraid some of your upperclassmen may have ruined many things at school with our flagrant disregard for the rules. Many a privilege was revoked after our career.
All right. Well, anyway. So, yeah, the mosh pit, I guess it was just pretty wild. And I just had never, like, done it before. Like, there's all these, like, crazy, like, social rules about the mosh pit. Like, people go down and they, like, pick each other up. I mean, there was, like, a lot of people, especially during, like, Primus.
How many would you say?
Well, in the mosh, I don't know. Like, there was just, like, everyone was packed in, and so, I don't know. Like, there was probably a couple thousand people there, but, I guess the mosh pit is... I don't know. It was, like, a lot of people in the middle, especially during the Primus. Like, people were, like, crowd surfing and stuff. Like, I've never been, like, up close to that kind of thing before. But one thing that was awesome is that just Coheed and Cambria were playing their last song. It's like they're playing this crazy, like, it's like this heavy number. There's this crazy guitar solo. And it's like the climax of their show, right? But the crowd, there's this hick-looking, this trailer trash-looking Jesus guy. Some guy looked like, it was like this skinny, scraggly-looking dude with like a long beard. And he was like a main instigator in like the crowds. He can tell he really loved the band. He was doing a lot of crowd surfing and getting the mosh pit going and whatnot. But the crowd like got him up, and so he was like they're holding him up like in front of the guitarist because that puts him at about stage height. And they're like, I don't know, they're like staring at each other. And the crowd like held him up, and he was there like Jesus, like with his arms out and stuff. And that I just wasn't sure how I felt about Coheed and Cambria. Like mostly I like Pink Floyd and like random rap songs, right? But that definitely like sold me on the Coheed and Cambria. That was a wild experience. But in the mosh pit during Primus was much crazier. Like, well, the average main concert goer like smells terrible, dude. Like the smell of like BO and synthetic fruit vape smell was absolutely god awful.
With some cheap fabric softener in there, maybe, hopefully.
Well, there were just some seriously scuzzy manners there, man. I mean, it's also like 85 degrees out and whatnot, and hot. And there was like one dude who's like, I took a crazy amount of mushrooms, man, and he like started throwing up.
Wow.
Dude, it'd be like crazy.
That's shameful.
Well, dude, it'd be crazy to be in the middle of a mosh pit on a crazy amount of mushrooms, dude. But
yeah, that's the holy sacrament. I can't. You want to be in your Jimmy Jams with a hot shower nearby, a mug of warm tea and your slippers on.
Well, to give the guy credit, he was seen back in the mosh pit a couple minutes later. But for a minute there, he was like, sorry, man.
I can't believe I dared to question him. All right.
And so yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. Also, there would be like people who were mad that there was a mosh pit going on. Like some guys like, I've got kids here, and then the other guy was like, you're gonna break a rib. But I mean, if you don't like the mosh pit, man, you just gotta move away from the mosh pit, dude. That's how it works. So yeah, I don't know. I hadn't moshed before, but I can say now that I've moshed during, My Name Is Mud. Maybe you know that song.
Well, there's that Eminem song called Mosh too, which this makes me think of, which is outstanding. But that's a rap song, But yeah. All right. Well, back to the topic of hand, though. What you are saying here about this business of defensive versus opportunistic mindset,
right?
I remember when I was a freshman in college and I caught a cold, and I thought in order to get over this cold quickly, I will go to the grocery store. I'll get 6, of those gallons of Tropicana orange juice, and I guzzle them all as fast as my bloated stomach could possibly handle it, thinking that it's vitamin C, right? This is going to be good for me. But really, it's terrible for your health, and I probably just took 10 years off my pancreas just in that one instant alone. Because there's value to the fiber that you would have if you were actually eating oranges. The fiber kind of meets out the sugar that is contained within the fruit. It kind of leaves a little trail of breadcrumbs of sugar for your pancreas to take in a graduated and calm and calculated way, versus opening up the fire hose of sugar and just blasting your pancreas with it and expecting it to create enough insulin to keep up. And I just feel like there's some element of that here too in modern life for everyone, and we'll bring it back to your specific case in a second, but it used to be very rare to see, a naked woman. It would be a captivating experience when and where a naked woman of childbearing age, you wouldn't see that very often. But now there's more terabytes of pornography on the internet than you could ever hope to watch. There are more hours of porn than days remaining in your life. So it's like the way that the phone screens are organized. The big apps are all deployed by these capitalist corporations that have to increase your engagement quarter after quarter, so they can cram more ads down your throat quarter after quarter, and so you're just in a very short dopamine loop trying to keep you as addicted as possible. And I think that cocaine, there's a connection here with cocaine, which is made from a plant that's related to the cocoa plant. I believe I should really Wikipedia that before I shout into the microphone. But it's like it has a similar name, and it's yummy, like it's sugar adjacent. It's like a high metabolite, and so I think that it used to be that Mother Nature would mete out that trail of breadcrumbs, the naked women or dopamine hits. Let's just broadly say dopamine hits. But now there's so much dopamine on offer that we all have to be our own individual gatekeepers, and so you have to find some way to mete out the dopamine to yourself in a way that's not going to blow out your pancreas or whatever, if you'll pardon now the many times. I've mixed up the metaphors a couple times here, but you can see what I'm saying, right? That's why it sounds like something like hot yoga. Being in a defensive mindset involves really short loops around the addiction carousel. It's the bigger trips that you can accomplish much more if you can tolerate a much more delayed response. All right, we did take a short break just to let the multitudinous fire trucks in the local Bramhall fire station make their pass. So now we're back, and Brian, you were about to tell us how the mosh pit fits into this whole concept of meeting out your dopamine hits, over time, like in a trail of breadcrumbs versus a fire hose.
See, I guess I don't think it's so much about meeting out your breadcrumbs, because I guess the reason I bring up the concert is because it's like a defortifying activity.
Meaning you went outside your comfort zone, did something new and novel? What is defortifying? What is defortifying about it?
I guess that's it. I mean, having not done the mosh pit before. But probably going to any concert and mixing up in the mosh pit's like a pretty wild experience would be my judgment. Having done it one time now, I guess I can see why people do it.
Well, damn, son. Hey, look, I mean, if you thought the mosh pit and the novelty to be found, down at Thompson's Point last night was a gem, and I'm sure that it was. I actually heard from other people it was a pretty good show. Then I would suggest packing plenty of adult diapers when you hit Prague. It's going to be just like that, but off the chain. It's like someone's whole other culture over there. But it's a really fun culture, and obviously lots of history, beautiful architecture, unbelievable women. It is It is going to be wild, dude. So yeah, this is just the sort of thing. Like, I feel like your trip to Prague fits readily into this program of opportunistic mindsets.
Right. Well, traveling is, it's definitely I guess, fortressifying activity.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate one, right? The ultimate way to dissolve any kind of mental structure, just go to a whole other reality and just try to figure out how to feed yourself and go to the bathroom and whatnot, and how to get along, how to navigate, how to work the transport system. Yeah, I think that that's going to be pretty good. So, all right, have you got any other ideas besides mosh pits, hot yoga, and flying out to Prague? Although, to be fair, you are going out to Prague to play the aforementioned magic cards, flip some cards, but that's real life, not on the computer.
Well, yeah, I think that's quite a bit better. I mean, it is a bit addictive, but it's about that cultivation. So it's not like I think you can like never look at your phone or go on Reddit, although it'd probably be better to never go on Reddit. Oof. But it's just about, it's about that cultivation, and so it's about doing more opportunistic things than like defensive things, right? I think, or
so it's about maintaining a ratio of the two.
Yeah, well, and I guess it's not. Well, going on Reddit isn't like a defensive thing, but it puts you in the defensive mindset, and so just doing things that are like cocaine, you got to balance out strongly with things in like the opposite direction. Or you're just going to get the PTSD, man.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that's an interesting way to think of PTSD. I always thought of PTSD as being like someone is a disconnect between the person that you are and the person you imagine you should be and in the specific case of PTSD, people like, especially coming back from war, they go to these wars and then they do something horrible, and then they were like, wow, there really is a monster living inside me. But you think that just being in a defensive mindset, that alone is enough to give you PTSD? And I have no idea if the PTSD I just described that's just my guess at what it is.
Well, my amateur thinking about PTSD is that it's being overwhelmed by stress, and so anxiety is about like worrying about the future, regardless of whether if there's like a present threat. And so, to some extent, the anxious feelings, or protecting yourself or being defensive is going to have its time and place, and will get you through certain situations. But when you can't, when it like hijacks your mind and you can't, it should be like a tool in your tool belt and not like let it take over your
state.
Mind.
Yeah. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think anyone, I don't know, I don't know like what it would be like to go to war and be engaged in some crazy thing, but at least I can see why people are so stressed out in our crazy society. It's just so easy to be overwhelmed by stress, and we just like lack the discernment about what to do. I don't know, cultivation and discernment, man, I think is what it is.
All right, so like how it sounds like just doing positive things more or less. Like why I guess I still want to know. Like I almost want to ask, like, how have you not figured this out before? But you tried hot yoga before, but it didn't. But was it just as you stated earlier that you didn't go to the 5:30 session, and so it just works much better at 5:30, or like what is like. I feel as though this is going to just translate to anyone who's like going through what you're going through and trying to recreate your footsteps to get on some kind of a positive path. What are you distilling down here that maybe didn't apply last time you did hot yoga?
Well, I think if you have the anxiety, doing the hot yoga is like a really good solution. It's like it'd be like jumping in the cold ocean every day. Would probably also be effectual as well. I think the thing is you need like a pretty drastic solution to like the amount of like overstimulation we have in our modern life. Yeah. And so I don't think anything minor is going to cut it. But like mountain climbing would probably get the job done. Unfortunately, I don't think hanging out and smoking the weed does it, and in fact does the opposite.
Yeah, it's like unearned dopamine. It's like it comes at a terrible price. Nothing's free in the end, right?
That is the thing about it. It doesn't contribute to an opportunistic mindset. I would say that is. Now, I think it. I mean, I don't know. It grants you some insight. And I don't know. I guess. I mean, I did I don't know, smoke some weed over the past few weeks and think about these ideas, and they materialize. And the other thing I'm going to do is kung fu, because they just do it right up the road over here.
But isn't kung fu this word for just the overall idea of doing something over and over again until your muscles are weary and your eyes ache, to just master every tiny little detail you possibly can to create this exquisite art of doing anything? Like, can there be kung fu and brooming a stairwell? This is what I thought kung fu meant, but that may just be because of the man in that Marco Polo Netflix special from 7 or 8 years ago. He explained it this way, but it's not a specific martial art, though, right? Isn't that right?
Well, I think colloquially, I think we are talking about something. It might have a technical name for it, but I know on their website it says it's the Wing Chun school of kung fu.
Oh, have I heard of this one?
I don't know.
I feel like I've heard of this on Rogan, because that guy's always on about martial arts of one kind or another. But now I can't remember what he said about it. It just sounds familiar.
Right. But I think the word kung fu does mean mastery in Chinese. Yeah. I mean, you're asking me what else am I going to do to cultivate an opportunistic mindset? Well, kung fu is one of those things, regardless of whatever the technical meaning. Really, I think any martial art would, suffice.
Yeah.
I think, what you need is to do something that'll work, right? So going to the yoga at 5:30 works for me, and I think just because the kung fu's right up the street, this is going to be great, and I'll actually go. The key is to actually do it. Is ultimately what it comes down to, right?
Do you remember when we did a turn or two at the boxing gym? A few, I guess 5 or 6 years back now, eh?
Well, who could forget?
Yeah, those are good times. I like martial arts too. I want to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's $200 a month for membership. I'm like, I mean, the boxing gym was $15 a month or something. It's just no comparison at all, unfortunately. But maybe it'll become more affordable.
Well, I did consider doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. I think I kind of want to do the Kung Fu. I just don't want to get hurt, and I don't want some overzealous dude to blow out my knee. You get a dislocated knee or something doing Kung Fu. And
track that guy down.
Yeah, and I think the Kung Fu will probably be less damaging on the joints. But I don't know. I guess I'm pretty interested. If there was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu place around here, I probably would just do it. But I think I have a higher success rate probably with the Kung Fu is what I think.
How far away is the hot yoga every morning at 5:30?
Well, it's over on Cove Street, so I don't know. I do have to drive over there, but it's a 5 or so minute drive in the early morning traffic. I can listen to 1 6-minute song, I think is how it works.
Wow. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, all that sounds pretty good, Brian. You'll have to keep us posted about. Have you finished Haidt's book, or are you in the midst of Haidt's book?
I'm a couple of chapters in on the audiobook.
You'll have to let us know how he, ties that whole box with a bow and what conclusions he comes to in the end. And I want to know if he gets into the hormone side of it at all. I just feel like cortisol and dopamine and potentially other hormones that experts know about are going to play a huge role in this. But we shall see. I mean, does it seem how is this book it's nonfiction, right? It just must have a bunch of case studies and must have some stories to weave together a presentation of some data.
I mean, that's basically the case. He's just talking about the research they've done and how we got to our current situation, when a timeline of the technology happening. It all starts with the iPhone 4 and whenever that happened, which had the first rear facing camera.
Ooh, yikes.
And then from there Instagram came shortly after that, I believe is how it works. He just talks about how the specifics of how you have to be 13 to be on these social media websites, but they don't enforce it, and these license agreements that no one reads and whatnot. So anyway, lots of stuff like that. And he does get into how the mind works and about the defensive mindset, and I guess that ruminated in my brain, the thing you're talking about cultivation and discernment specifically are he does not talk about those things. That would be my spin on it.
I see.
But I don't know. I know we talk about finance a lot on this podcast.
Well, here, let me have a tie-in then, because I have one final question for you
okay,
before we give our listeners' ear a break. But this is an interesting one. Do you think that technology could be rolled out in such a way that is consistent with an opportunistic mindset? Like, could there be a version of Facebook, here's the financial angle, that doesn't have a board of directors, it's flogging them to increase their profitability each and every quarter? Could you have a Facebook that encouraged a healthy amount of time with the app and actually helped you reconnect with your high school chums versus try to cram as many ads down your throat as they possibly can and maximize addiction in a full throttle, sort of approach?
Right.
Like, what do you reckon? What's your opinion on that?
Well, I mean, probably, and Jonathan Haidt talks about how, like, the whole problem is that it's, like, profitable to try to tap the minds of, like, young kids who don't have fully developed, cerebellums and make, questionable. It's easy to get them addicted, right?
Yeah, they have no idea what they're lambs to the slaughter.
Basically, they're the easiest market to tap, and so that's, like, just what they've done. And so, I mean, what you'd want to do is... like, give your kid, like, a flip phone and keep the smartphone way the hell away from them. And we should probably all get rid of, like, we should all just have flip phones and not be pussies.
Well, there's, like, Google Maps and the ability to have podcast, instant communication, text messages, there is, and then being able to take notes. I try to keep my phone free of visually interesting apps, so there's no Twitter on there. You save that for the computer. At least then it's not so easy.
Well, yeah, the Google Map sure is handy, huh?
You're going to go to Prague and walk around like someone who's lived there for 25 years because the map will just point you the way. It's no problem. It's going to be great.
I mean, the days of printing out MapQuest directions was pretty rough.
Yeah, yeah, that was tough, man. I'm glad that we have moved beyond that sad state of affairs.
Well, anyway, that's like pretty much all I have to say about Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that. So I don't know. Do you want to try to talk about something else too?
Well, no, we'll just leave it. The last podcast we did, I'm well pleased at this development, Brian. Not only am I pleased that you're feeling like you're getting some traction, which is that's really all that matters is your trajectory in life, right? Your position ain't so important. If you're going down, you feel rotten. If you're going up, you feel great.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really matter where on the chart you are, as long as you're headed in the right direction. But last week, I was saying that virtually every problem that is plaguing modern society, you turn that stone over and always the same ugly wriggling centipede under there. And that is the way that we structure our businesses. That is the last great frontier for democracy that must be conquered, So specifically the problem of the apps and the technology being aggressive about devouring as much of your attention as it possibly can instead of trying to foster some kind of a helpful relationship and, actually be a tool for you, is the difference between those two pictures is we just need a better way to structure businesses, just the way that they're built up, because having one person or one board of directors own them causes them to behave in a sociopathic fashion because those folks only care about profit because that's the only part of the business that touches them. So that is my usual wrap. So it's interesting to see that capitalism may have a little something to do with your situation too.
Well, I mean, I suppose so. I think the smartphone is going to be like a really tough thing to get rid of, right? It's like going to be pretty deeply embedded, and it makes like a lot of money, right? And like to really create the kind of positive change that we need in society. Well, people. Like one thing Jonathan Haidt mentions in the book is that people who like are keyboard warriors and do politics online are more depressed than people who are like political activists in real life.
Yeah.
Now, with that said, we kind of are.
I didn't realize the comparison was coming there, but that's even more dramatic. Sorry, carry on.
Well, we kind of are online political activists. Although you went door to door for the Democrats, Socialist of America.
I did have a little turn politicking, but it was just brutal. It was brutal work, and I don't know. I also didn't like everything that the Democratic Socialists of America, I didn't love everything they did. I just thought we needed some kind of I just went there because of the socialist name.
Well,
but
that was the Bernie Sanders year, right?
These are the Bernie. Yeah, this was the peak Bernie Sanders year, right. 2016.
And the curmudgeonly old ladies would cast you out at the first mention of the word socialism. Is that how it went?
No, not really. It was an interesting, eclectic crew, and a lot of time was spent arguing about what we should do. And they were really nice people, and some of them have since gone on to have minor political careers around town. Yeah, I think it's good. They're still around as far as I know.
But I mean, you did like knock on people's door and you would mention the word socialism and they would get upset.
Yeah, there was one old lady in particular. I was like, yeah, we're from the Democratic Socialists of America. We're just handing out some pamphlets trying to spread some awareness. And she was like, oh, you're the socialist? I was like, yes, ma'am, that's correct. She's like, well, I'm the other guys. And she slammed the door in our face. And we're like, oof.
See,
that is so weird. That immune response is so bizarre to me. What were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really crazy. Well, it's just funny that, I mean, if you wanted to like have like a People's Bank or like a 99% party, I mean, that's under the socialism net, right? Yeah. And then people are going to tell you that, you know, socialism doesn't work and leads to the downfall of society.
I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, the U.S. military is a great example of a socialist organization. Like, I don't even know how to respond to that anymore. It's the dumbest thing. Like, I know you're not saying it. You're just, regurgitating what this old lady is saying. But like, socialism, that socialism is going to be the downfall is just so. I just don't even know what to. Have people not given this much thought? I don't. Probably not.
Well, I mean, I guess. I mean, I think the like observation of Marxism is that like society is going to go through cycles, and so I guess I believe in the upward trajectory of it all.
Well, there's no question things are a sight better now than they were 3,500 years ago.
It seems inevitable that like, I mean, I think like with COVID, kind of the system caved in on itself, and so I don't know. Like I feel like Joe Rogan and Elon Musk like sort of prevailed ultimately, or at least Joe Rogan's still doing his thing. And
does anyone take the COVID vax anymore? I mean, when Joe Biden gets the COVID, does anyone question that his vax is his vax card filled out? Like no one talks about it anymore, right?
Well, only Andrew Cuomo has the gall to go up there and still bitch about Joe Rogan and ivermectin somehow, or like not admit that he was wrong. So I mean that part I guess is a little crazy. I don't know. Well, my broader point was that I forgot what I was saying.
You said I believe in the forward progress, and that the principal prophecy of or this principal idea behind Marxism is that these ways of organizing an economy go through evolutions, life cycles, if you will.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think that I am a Marxist, and I mean, how do you like not believe in that observation? But I don't know if it necessarily means that like capitalism is bad. It just means that it's outdated. Or like obviously capitalism is part of the evolution of this thing that like goes back to like Rome and stuff, right? And Sumer. I mean, obviously we lost our debt forgiveness, but I mean it's part of the evolution of society. So I mean, like obviously it's not going to last forever. Although I mean I think it will last. Well, I don't think we need that many changes. Like I keep saying this, but we need a 99% party in like a public bank, and like I think most of society's serious ills would be solved, right? So like what?
Yeah, well, all of our big problems. We go down the list. All of our big problems are the result of some kind of a monopoly in a rent seeker, and that's capitalism. Is a look. Professor Richard Wolff has this quote. I think it's Professor Wolff that. Marx spent pages and pages and pages extolling the dynamic and innovative nature of capitalism. Oh, it was Hitchens that said this, and that Marx heaped more glory and more eloquently on capitalism than Milton Friedman ever did. The Chicago school. What is it called when the government cuts all kinds of spending? Austerity. Milton Friedman, the austerity hawk. Yeah, like. And it was a great system, and it has a lot of great properties. But when you start to get to the level of multinational corporation, it starts to have some real liabilities, and all of our problems like offshoring are related to the way that we structure business. It worked great, and it's capitalism specifically is like the Industrial Revolution coming out of the Reformation. So think like the 1500s, the 1600s. That's really when capitalism starts to get going, and its ideas are formalized in like the 1700s by John Stuart Mill and Adam Smith, of course, and Ricardo, guys like that. So that's where you're about to say something.
Well, like our system like has the framework that we need to like make the changes we need to have happen, right? It's not even like like all that needs to happen is like people need to like get smarter, right? Because like just through our democratic institution, it's just like the problem is our system is susceptible to like the political will of billionaires. Right?
Yeah, well, the oligarchy always tries to take control, and I think that the two titanic forces that are locked in a duel, and we call this duel like history, is on the one hand monopolies, rent seeking, rent extraction, and on the other hand democracy. Like as the pages fall off the calendar and the years go by, I think it looks to me like our society is getting more democratic instead of less democratic over time. And another way of saying you distribute decision making so that no one person's ego gets in the way. By distributing decision making, it cancels out the effect of any one person's specific ego, and you get decisions that are emergent property of the group versus the top down ego driven of the one person. That I think is the real stock market chart of our society. And I think that the business community is just like the last frontier that democracy has to conquer. Before, not to go into utopianism like you would always object to, Brian, but like we're just going to solve this set of problems. That we will then introduce a new set of problems. Those need to be solved, and the attempts at Marxist societies have certainly borne that out.
I don't know that. Like, see, I think if things change, there'll probably be like new problems, but. I don't know, like if you're like a gorilla, right? I mean, you're probably not the silverback who's in charge. You're probably one of the other nameless gorillas, part of the pack, and you're just kind of subject to the political will of the silverback, right? And it's like kind of the same situation where we're just subject to like the chief ape, and like I just don't see that particular paradigm. It just isn't going to go away, and it's like what's the best system within that confine, right?
You'll never get rid of the chief ape, but you can get rid of resource hoarding scams, and you can understand that pleonexia, the wealth addiction, is a problem that besets people like any other addiction, and that just what you've talked about. They're trying to people are on these cycles of dopamine, and like. Wealth addiction is one of those things you can get addicted to, and it brings down society. So you're always going to have the silverback who is, physically dominant. But as far as hoarding billions of dollars that you and your descendants could never hope to spend, that is just insanity. And we can get rid of that through the simple application of democracy, right? And that's what the people that have the billions of dollars have always feared. They can't help but notice that things are becoming more democratic over time, and that that's a direct threat to our hoard of wealth here, right? So, it's an interesting question to be sure. For political philosophy.
I mean, I think in the ape metaphor, if the apes have the capacity to increase their intelligence, and maybe they can figure out some ways to feed themselves and protect themselves to some extent, so they don't need the silverback. Obviously, that puts them to a better position. But I guess I think I think you're always going to see a pretty substantial disparity. There's just always going to be that poverty of like the elite are always going to be the elite man. Like it's just like that's just how we are as like a.
Oh, I agree.
Species.
Look, I mean, so there's like elite and there's elite, right? We're going to need the people who are good leaders, who know how to organize people and get a job. In order to perform, for humans to perform labor, we're always going to need some kind of a hierarchy for sure. But what we don't need are absentee landlords and absentee corporation owners gathering all of the wealth of society, into their own hands and causing major shortages on the back end, right? That's what we don't need.
Okay, I've got a line of inquiry for you.
Inquire away, sir.
But okay, so what do you like people are cooler than other people, right? Some people are cooler than others, right? And
yes.
How does that work? But I think like why are cool people cool? I don't know. It's like the cool people are the ones who are able to do the right things, right?
The right things. What does right mean in this context?
Well, something that's like in line with like social expectations. Like, so you could conjure that like the right thing to do is to like sacrifice yourself for like the betterment of others. And there might be a good way to do that. Although you can also be like righteously just go around life being like a doormat also. And like,
well, like Mr. Bond, right? He knows exactly what the etiquette is in every situation. He's always impeccably dressed. His situation's always under control. He's comfortable in his own skin. Is he cool in the way you're saying?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
But like, so cool people, well, they're able to like read the social situation and react like profitably.
Yes, yeah.
And And so I don't know, like I just don't know how like it's going to go away, that there's going to be people who you're just in such a position to extract value, and like they're just going to have like the top people who do that the best, and they're like the elite. And so
who's in a position to extract value?
Like if you're an elite, like if I dominate the social relationship, I'm just going to get more out of the relationship than you're gonna, right? That's just like how it goes. Like it's like a power and the ability to wield it or it's like more than power though, but like just the ability to be cool, man, or like
people are definitely unequal, right? That's the fundamental point here.
Right.
And how do you fit that into the notions of democracy? Right, this is a real philosophical question you're driving at here.
Yeah, well, and so just ultimately, the people have to be better. But I guess that's why I'm a skeptic on like utopianism, like what that means. I think is I just don't think we're always going to have some big inequities, and so we just got to think about how we're going to handle that most efficiently.
We need an inequality in order to properly motivate and incentivize people, right? Again, we just don't need absentee landowners and absentee company, people sending proxies to board of directors meetings. Right? That's all unproductive, right? That's not useful at all. Go ahead.
Well, okay. Certainly I agree, but how do you get the people who like have an excess of political power or social power or whatever you want to call it? Like, how do you get them to not fleece the poors, the proletariat?
Well, I think they have to be allowed to fleece the people who are more capable will always be more successful than people who are less capable. And we don't need to monkey with that hierarchy. What we need to do is make sure that decisions are distributed among as many souls as possible. And anyone who's affected by a decision ought to be able to have a vote in the making of that decision. Or you are like Plato, who had his master Socrates poisoned by a democratic mob that took over Athens in the wake of the Peloponnesian Wars, and take the other position that we can never have democracy because the mob is unworthy, and we don't want mob rule, and so therefore only an enlightened philosopher can. Those are the two sides of the argument.
Well, okay. Well, I feel like you're talking about how things ought to be, and yeah, I mean we ought to have democratic accountability for things that will hurt us, but I mean, what you can do though is, make it muddy the waters as to whether like the rent-seeking behavior or whatever you're doing is harmful. That's like the problem we've got now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a concerted, and we're going to be talking to Dr. Michael Hudson about this one 2 pods hence, but there was a concerted campaign in the late 19th century to create neoclassical economics and to do away with classical economics, because classical economics, in the Adam Smith sense, made a very clear distinction between earned and unearned income. And so, like the parasite, the first thing it wants to do is destroy the ability of the host to perceive that it's being parasitized. And so that's why the economics profession was laid siege to in the late 19th century. Looking forward to talking to Dr. Hudson on that count. But that's what you're saying.
Yeah, so I don't know. See, I guess I think I'm a Marxist, but like the pendulum's always going to sway in the way that it is. And I don't know, as part of the nameless proletariat, we're going to have these odd ideas about how things ought to be. But I'm definitely a Marxist, but I just don't know that we're gonna get to how things like ought to be, I feel like you're a believer in how things like ought to be, which I don't really understand.
It's not that. It's like there is a arc to history, right? Before people were employees and employers from the 15 and 1600 onwards, they were serfs and lords. It's another way to organize the production of things. And before that, they were masters and slaves. And each of those systems had a lifespan, long or short, that came to an end when it no longer was a good fit for the conditions that it found itself in, the historical conditions it found itself in. And that time has already come. Marx published volumes 2 and 3 of Capital in 1892. And still today, we've got Andrew Yang on the 2020 campaign trail going around saying things like, well, we didn't know that capitalism would be killed by its own child, technology. And I'm like, my dear man, when did Karl Marx wrote volumes about this 150 years ago? the historical the river of history has been dammed up, and it's just bursting and straining, and we've got a tiny minority of us doing everything they can, including spreading crazy pop propaganda, to the point where the old biddy who, when she gets a socialism flyer from yours truly in 2016 slams the door in my face, without ever having any concept of what socialism really is. Yeah, I remember when I went to the movie theater in 2009 and saw Michael Moore's Capitalism, a Love Story. He was talking about things like capitalism and socialism. I remember not being really able to comprehend the movie because I didn't have a clear idea what each of those things were, and I had to go look it up on the internet afterwards because our education system doesn't teach us that. So all I'm suggesting is let the river of history run its course. That's going to be for better and for worse. It is going to be a stock market chart. There will be drop-offs and lows, and there'll be highs, and there'll be some systems, some versions of a democratic apparatus of production and distribution will be better than other ones. There are already many models to be touched upon, like the Mondragon Corporation in Spain, which is one of their top 10 corporations. It's all run as a worker co-op. So I don't know. It's not about utopianism. We're going to be realistic. Democracy comes with its share. It comes freighted with its share of problems, as elucidated by our dear friend Plato so carefully in the 4th century BC.
All right.
Yeah, we don't want utopia, but we got to burst the zit, man. It's driving everyone crazy. Of the many bricks in the wall we've discussed, the technology is one, like the destruction, the AI taking everyone's jobs. That's one. The apps being addictive. That's another one. The jobs offshored to China. That's another one. All of these are problems with the way we structure our business. We just need to change that shape again.
I think the solution that's available to us is, just the regular apes just have to learn and adapt, right? And so that's what I would offer as the solution. So do you agree with that, or do you have some different feeling about what the solution is supposed to be? Is it to get out the guillotine?
Learn and adapt in. I'm just catching up to the guillotine comment. Learn and adapt, definitely. But we have the benefit of flipping the pages in the history book and identifying some of the major trends. That'll give us a clue which direction to grope towards as we learn and adapt, as you're saying. Not just learn and adapt in general, but learn and adapt with a direction or purpose. And I think you don't have to have a deep knowledge of history books to see that democracy some kind of increases over time, and technology increases over time. And these are the two great forces of, the two titanic forces of history.
Well, what I would want to do is go find that lady. Do you remember where she lives?
She lives off Forest Ave. I couldn't remember which house, but you want to go find her? And
I just want to talk to her because I think almost any reasonable person would agree that having a People's Bank. I don't know if she'll understand about the Federal Reserve and what exactly that means, and that we're not on the gold standard, and about money being printed out of debt. I guess I don't know if she would understand that.
It's not an easy thing to understand. It took me a long time to figure it all out, unball that skein of yarn.
Well, that movie Zeitgeist definitely helped.
That's a little kickstart. You're like a Harley Davidson, eh?
It does. Yeah. I'm sure it's caught many a college student in its wake.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely one of those casualties myself.
Anyway, so yeah, I think that being Marxist means calling for to other people, it means calling for some kind of Marxist revolution, which I think is something you have to be very suspect of, I guess. It's just that the system we have, people who are it's a problem to you that elites have screwed you over by saddling you with 6 figures of student loan debt.
It's more this is. Again, we'll go back. We'll talk to Dr. Hudson about this. But the issue for me is I needed my debts written down to my actual ability to repay them, and the lack of that option put me in an untenable situation for 15 years. Yeah, so that's the source of my resentment.
Right, and so, but there's going to be people. Obviously, we're significantly well off, compared to most people, and then so. When you start calling for a Marxist revolution, and I guess we're not really calling for the guillotine on this podcast, but you're just at this risk that you're going to get bunched in with the elite by the serfs beneath you. I don't know. Anyway, I'm suspect about a Marxist revolution because it seems like we already have the system we need. People just need to be smarter. So
yeah, so I agree with you. That's my thought too. I don't want to have to deal with a revolution. It's hard enough to deal with just going to work as is. What I think I think that something like Jeremy Corbyn's proposal that whenever a business wants to sell itself, you first have to offer it up to its employees. Something like that is close to a one-shot kill to all these problems.
Well, the way to create the political will to enact that kind of change has to come from like the people. Right?
Yeah, it has to come from a whole lot of podcasts.
Yeah. So people gotta like raise their awareness, which I guess is what we're trying to do here.
Hell yeah, man! This is why we call it system failure.
All right. Well, I guess that's a good place to wrap it up then, huh?
Yeah, I think we've bent the ear of our loving audiences enough for today. I would like to remind you all to send us a note and let us know what you think of our prognostications at nop@substack.com. And if you want to read a variety of essays on this and many other hair-raising topics, then you can log right on to nop.substack.com. There you'll find a treasure trove of essays that's sure to titillate. So we hope to see you on the interwebs, and everyone, we will catch you next week.
All right, see ya.